All right. It says we're live, but there's always a 30-second delay. So let me just make sure that. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my regular Wednesday night live stream. Today I have an amazing guest. I was very, very, very pleased to be able to get this person, Peter Drew. You are an artist. You are pretty sought after around Australia. Is that fair to say?
I guess so. Enough.
Very humble, very humble. But no, you are, and you're relatively well known, I would say. Obviously only just came to discover you in the last couple of weeks, but I've enjoyed like researching you, and I hope that everything, I hope we learn a lot about you. I'm excited.
Were you gonna do a Bible verse?
Yes, I was. Just give me a sec. You're funny. All right, so the Bible verse I've chosen is in Galatians chapter 5. Okay, so it's a couple of verses. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. I'll leave it there. So for those watching and for those who I've spoken to on the phone recently, you probably know why I read that. So it's super relevant behind the scenes, but it's super nice. Did you want to discuss that Bible verse? That's what you said off camera.
Why did you read that verse?
Because I think there's a lot that you mean on a personal level, or like why on a larger level?
Either or, both.
Oh, okay. Well, just in general, I think we are too impulsive, and we do things and we don't think, or we do things and we think, but we're doing it to be cunning and to do the wrong thing. So if you are led by the Spirit, in this case, I think that means the Holy Spirit, Christ, then that should take over. So it's like, I don't know, I'm not a very good explainer, but it basically that takes, if the Spirit leads more than the physical and the carnal, then you're not going to fall into temptation. So that's why I read that, because I think that's a good lesson for all of us. What do you reckon?
But why? Yeah, but why specifically? Was there a specific reason for that now?
Yes, but I won't divulge that on camera. I can tell you that later, though.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that sounds pretty solid. I mean, in the abstract, I can understand that, the body and the higher principle. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you stand on faith and God and Christianity? Because you see, go.
No, you go.
I was going to say, because a lot of your work is about people of different faiths, or at least it looks like that. Sure. With so go, respond.
I've never really been of faith in any sort of in any official way. I wasn't brought up that way. We never went to church. I remember going to Sunday school a few times and church on the odd occasion, but there was no real drive from my parents to do that. And so I can remember very clearly asking my mum when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8, is there a God? And she said, what do you think? And she just left it at that. And so the older I get, I sort of went through a period of being a annoying atheist. But the older I get, I sort of see there being a necessity for faith in some respect, but I can't see myself ever subscribing to a specific faith or sort of a literal interpretation of a text. But I respect it, and I like people of faith, and I like the wisdom that's sort of that's recorded there. And I think the sort of the modern idea, and I mean modern in the true sense, in the sense of, you know, post-enlightenment thinking that we can just throw out all religion is incredibly foolish and arrogant, and it's and yeah, so I appreciate it, and I sort of try to find out more about religion as much as at, you know, every opportunity I get. So
I totally respect that. That's really nice. All right, so I'm going to just go off a couple of questions that I've written. And I know you said off camera that you do like personal questions, so I will absolutely, I know you probably prefer them, but I just want to get some of these stuff out of the way. So you're obviously an artist. Would you call yourself a particular type of artist? Is there a category for the type of artist that you are?
I guess people will refer to me most often as a street artist because I stick up posters in the street. But I say that I'm an artist and I print posters and stick them up on the street. And I don't really mind what category people put me in, but that's fundamentally what I do. So
that's cool. And why did you study art? Like, what made you get into that specifically? Like, did you ever have another calling? And because people who go to university don't always end up doing what they studied, but you've done it. Like, that's great. So how did that pan out? I
started studying accountancy. I did that for a couple of months, and then I did psychology. My undergraduate degrees in psychology and philosophy. Then I started doing honors philosophy, and at the same time I had my first exhibition, and I sort of had to choose between one or the other, and I went with art. And because, I mean, really, honors philosophy is not exactly going to land me a good job. So, yeah, I chose art. And but really, ever since starting, you know, ever since becoming an adult, I've been trying to figure things out. And I think art is really a way of figuring things out. Even when art appears to be sort of telling people what to think, it is really asking questions. I mean, at least it should be if it is still art.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And did you find that going to school actually helped? Did it refine your skills a little bit more, or did you already feel like you knew what you were doing and that going, because a lot of people these days oppose higher education because, you know, I don't need it, I already know my craft? Or did you find it helpful? Did it help your craft?
No, absolutely. I mean, I found, you know, there's a lot of useless nonsense at university, but there is obviously good stuff as well. And it's really about finding the right teachers, finding the people that connect with you and whose attitude towards learning you find inspiring. And all you need to do is find, you know, one or two of those teachers as you go through, and avoid the ones that are that don't work for you. And so, no, I had a great time at university, and art school less so. I mean, art school is really just it's just a philosophy degree. You don't really get taught techniques. My degree was a master's degree. It was after I went to uni. I did a master's degree at the Glasgow School of Art, and it was really just it was a research. Is a degree in research in creative practices. So it's just totally theory based. And I mean, I came out of psych and philosophy. I'd done plenty of theory. What I would say is good about art school is just being in an environment with other artists who take art seriously. That was a great sort of privilege and worth
good
paying.
Energy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just great energy, but it's kind of expensive to be in that environment for a year. Because I mean, we're in Glasgow, so we had to pay our fees straight up. So it was, you know, no hex over there for us.
Oh, that's good. And are you part Scottish or anything like that? Is there a reason?
No, my wife.
I was just curious.
Yeah, we just wanted an adventure, really, and we wanted to get out of Adelaide. And it seemed like they had a great school. Yeah, we just sort of picked it. So yeah, we were there on our honeymoon, and we thought, yeah, let's come back. And we're in Glasgow in the one day of the year when they have decent weather. And we thought this place is great, and we, you know, got our places at the school, went back there, and then for the whole year it was just sort of rain and snow, and it's kind of a miserable city, but you know, I liked it for some reason.
It's a miserable city, but you still liked it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Is it a dark city? People say that it's not. I mean, it's obviously very green, but there's a baroqueness that there's a darkness to it or something.
Yeah. It's a gloomy place. I mean, it is, because it's raining and everything's wet all the time. It's sort of soggy. Like it's so wet.
Yeah.
And the buildings are old, and it was sort of a city that used to be the second biggest city in the British Empire for a long time. As a big shipbuilding city and had a much larger population than it does now. And it was a very rich place. Like it sort of built the British Empire's ships. And so in its heyday, it was an amazing place. And so you see these resplendent buildings that were built on the backs of colonization and slavery in a lot of ways. And so, it's sort of, you can walk down the streets and see history manifest. So it's interesting for that reason. You don't really get that from Australian cities.
No, that's true. Did you travel in between? Did you go to Spain for the weekend? Did you go to Ireland? Did you go to no, you didn't do that.
No, I've done plenty of travel outside of that, but when we were in Glasgow, we just studied and worked because we were so poor, because we had to pay our fees and then we had to sort of survive. And we barely had enough to just pay the fees. And then we got there and we started working and studying, and it was just it was really miserable. And
oh, that's disappointing.
It made me realize, I mean, we've got it really good here as well in terms of minimum wage in this country. Like for the same work that I do here, I was getting half as much in the UK. So it really made me appreciate how good it is here.
Well, that's really good. I think that's part of the art of being Australians, where we all end up traveling because we're so far away. We do it all in one bulk. I find that that's become something that we're known for, because every time I've been overseas to Europe, there's an Aussie, and we sort of we just band together. Did you find that there's a brotherhood among Aussies, or a camaraderie among Aussies?
Yeah, I mean, I've traveled a fair bit. The biggest trip I took was for 9 months, and that was a big sort of round the world trip. And I sort of got it all in at once, just one epic journey. And and then you hear an Australian accent. It's like, oh my God, is that how we sound? And then, you get along, you find you have a lot in common all of a sudden.
I know, that's so true. All right, I'm going to ask you very arty, more artsy questions at the moment. I do also want to say to anyone watching who has an issue with anything, that it's okay with, we already spoke about it off camera, we're okay about disagreeing, and this isn't a gotcha interview. Nah. This is just getting to know someone and expanding my audience and expanding topics. So we're just going to be super respectful with each other, and that's what we've been so far, don't you reckon?
Yep.
Yeah, so far so good. All right, so one of my questions here is, and this is something that bothers, I think, conservatives generally speaking. I'm not someone who is crazy about art, but I do admire it, and I have been to the Vatican, and I've seen all these different things. So do you believe that art today is lacking? Because, the level of what art once was, say the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling, say that level to now, the modernity and the abstract, it's not very nice. I can drive down a freeway in Victoria and see a hotel in the middle of nowhere, and that empty hotel is somehow meant to be art. So it's just ugly. So what are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, there's a lot to say, and I mostly agree. I mean, in order to be an artist, you need to love tradition as well as the imagination and innovation. It's important you need to connect what you do with tradition, otherwise you're not really an artist. So just temperamentally, I like traditional notions of art, and I have a huge amount of respect for the traditions of art and the art of past eras, because it is so self-evidently better than the vast majority of art you see today. And you've got to realize that they might have felt that way, and probably did feel that way throughout most periods of art. there was a lot of just dross and rubbish art being made, which just simply didn't stand the test of time, so you don't see it now. And on the same token, this sort of vast swathe of culture that we see around us, it's not going to last. And so in 200 years' time, people might look at the time we're going through now and see a few things, a few cultural artifacts that have survived and go, wow, they really knew that what they're doing in 2020. I can't for the life of me say what those cultural milestones will be, but I'm simply saying that it's not as stark as what it seems. But I get your point. The point you're making is actually it speaks to the spiritual poverty of the modern era in a lot of ways, and that's a difficult thing to convey. But I mean, historically you can trace modern art from the turn of the 20th century and the concept of the death of God, but also the technological changes. Like, it doesn't make sense to do portraiture or to dedicate your life to realistic portraiture when we have photography, because your skills are not as valuable as they once were. So there are those reasons, there are those reasons, but more than that, it's sort of, if you look at modern art, it is really a search to find the sacred and to find what is, to sort of recover the sacred in a lot of ways. And artists chased the sacred into the human imagination, trying to find what could be said to be sacred. And so they did that through abstraction and the subconscious. If you look at surrealist art, it's all about trying to find something sacred within the subconscious. And so if you find modern art frustrating, think of it more as a search.
I do.
Well, yeah, it is, but it's people trying to find something or trying to create something that is sacred in a modern world where so much has been what's the word, disenchanted. There's sort of that vast feeling of disenchantment that you get in the modern world, because everything is just material. It's all just we're all just made up of biological, mechanical biology, and so there's nothing really sacred within us. There's no soul. All those things are illusions. So modern art is an attempt to recover some of that, and it's sort of a desperate and mostly unsuccessful search. So,
did you hear about how when Notre Dame was burnt, how they were going to, I mean, I'm sure you heard about it being burnt, but the news after the fact was that now that Notre Dame has been burnt, that they were going to not restore it, but
make it better.
Yeah. How horrible is that thought? I mean, you don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to be a Christian to appreciate the fact that Notre Dame has its sort of Christian architecture. If that's even a thing that exists, it's probably not. But my point is that they were going to make it modern and abstract. And I'm like, no. But I think common sense won out in the end. What were your thoughts on that? Did you find that retarded? Do you find hearing that stuff like, what the hell? Do you get sort of triggered by it? I certainly do.
No, I mean, I'm sort of detached from it in some ways. I mean, I try to think in a way which is, well, have you seen Gaudi's cathedral that's built in Barcelona?
Oh no, I've been to Europe. I've been to Spain. I'm Spanish. I have not been to Barcelona. What's this?
I think his name is pronounced Gaudi. He's an architect, an artist. And he made this amazing cathedral. He died before it was finished, and they're still sort of finishing it off.
Oh no! Have they ruined it? Is that the point of your story?
No, the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at any type of architecture throughout history, Christian architecture, cathedrals, they were trying to make something that was cutting edge and actually inspired faith, because it was so incredible to build these. Just if you go inside a cathedral today, they're still absolutely stunning spaces that, and to do that takes innovation and requires people to take risks, creative risks. And so it's somehow you could make an argument that it is profoundly lacking in faith to just simply rebuild something exactly the same way that it was. You could put forward an argument that you could make it better. I mean, but I wouldn't make that argument. But I'm simply saying.
But it can be made, yes.
Yeah, if I was going to restore Notre Dame, I'd make it exactly as it was. But
yes,
I'm just saying that's not the attitude with which it was built. It was those cathedrals were built with an attitude of let's inspire faith in these people by making something absolutely amazing, making the most incredible thing we can. And that is fundamentally not a conservative mind frame. That's actually,
it might not be.
Yeah. That's what I'd say about that. So.
Have you been to Russia? Sorry, this is not in my list of questions. No, you should see the churches there. They have they look Taj Mahalish, and they have it's like when I went there, I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Yeah, it's stunning.
Russian Orthodox churches, because they have that strange.
Yes, they're Russian Orthodox church.
Which it's sort of like, do you understand? Do you know why it's like that? It's sort of like, it's got you can't see it, but it's got the bit which is slanted like that. The crucifix.
Why?
No, I was hoping you would know.
Wait, the crucifix is a straight cross. It's not slanted.
No, it's the Russian Orthodox one. It's a cross, and then it has an extra bit which is on a slant.
No, I don't know. I'm assuming it's because maybe their idea of the cross is that maybe because when Christ died, it was like that, but some people think that the back of the cross would have that extra plank. Right. That's my answer to that. I could be wrong though. Hopefully, someone Orthodox is watching and can correct me in the. But remember, guys, if you have questions, to ask them towards the end, the last 15 to 20 minutes. So let's have
one other question. Before, what sort of Christianity are you? Sort of a Catholic or Protestant?
No,
or what?
Protestant. Yeah. So my family was Catholic. My mum and dad. So my dad is from Spain, Catholic country. My mother's from Colombia, Catholic country. My mum and dad met here in Australia. And she very slowly realized in her mind that Catholicism didn't make sense. I know a lot of people argue that's the same thing. It isn't. Catholics pray to Mary. Protestants do not. And so, I'm a Protestant Christian. I didn't believe or follow the faith for quite a while, but I came back to it maybe 2 years ago. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. No, I was just wondering because it's
It's all right. You're allowed to ask questions. That's fine.
I didn't have any follow-ups, so I just
No, that's okay. So came from Catholicism. Now more Christian than Catholic, or more Protestant than where did my questions go? Okay, so here we go. All right, so this is dedicated to one of your artworks. Now, people in the group chat are asking specific questions. So what I'll do is, before I ask my questions, I'm going to do a screen share so that people can see or have an idea of the kind of stuff that you do. So I'll have the Instagram page up. Hang on, here it is. Now we're going to go down, and so this is part of your work. So this is one of your posters.
Yeah. Do you want me to speak to it?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that. Go ahead, speak to it. Yeah.
That guy, his name is Dervish. He was a Cameleer who lived. I don't have the exact dates in front of me because it's a new poster, so I need to memorize.
It's lovely. It looks good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he was a Cameleer who lived and died in Australia during the early part of the 20th century. The reason why I have his photograph is because it was taken for his exemption to the White Australia policy. In 1901, the Immigration Protection Act of 1901 could allow people who looked like Bija Dervish to be excluded on the basis of his race. And so but there was already people living in Australia who weren't white. So they created a system of exemptions whereby you could apply for an exemption based on character references, and then you'd be allowed to leave Australia and come back without risk of being racially excluded. And so I found all these photos in the archive, and I mean, I didn't discover them. Lots of people knew they were there, and I think my take on it is that I find I'd rather identify with these people that sort of that wanted to live in Australia despite this racist policy. I see that sort of as being more Aussie than the people who wrote the White Australia policy. And so that's why I made the poster. And it's as simple as that, really. I mean, I think there's more to it, but that's the core in a way. Yeah.
No, that's a very thorough explanation, and I'll speak to some of what you said in a moment. So this fellow is initially Indian by heritage, but it's correct?
Yeah. So he would have. Okay. It was technically British India at the time, but what today might be. Yeah, there's a lot of contention about. I can't quite remember. I think he might have been born in what is Pakistan today, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, and the thing is, the terminology is so contentious because colloquially, there are all those guys. Pretty much anyone wearing a turban in Australia at the time would have been referred to as an Afghan. Some of them, very few of them, were from Afghanistan. Lots of them were from what is today Pakistan. Pakistan didn't even exist at the time, so it's just sort of. My contention is that these guys are Aussie, and I let everyone else sort of have their fights about whether they were Indian or Pakistani or sort of or Afghan.
Yeah. All right, but there's one particular photo I'm actually trying to find to talk about, and I'll address what you said before. Where is it? Give me a sec. Either way, everyone now can see like some of your art and some of what you're known for. Give me a second. Where is it? Probably should have had it prepared. I just assumed all I had to do was go down.
If you know which one it is,
I want everyone to see it. But yeah, pretty much. Hang on, it's not there. You say something like "Welcome all Australians." Is that correct?
I know the poster said, the old one had "Real Australians say welcome."
That's right. Thank you. All right. Well, let me just get out of this for now. Stop sharing and go back to the video. All right. So over here, where's my question? Real Australians say welcome. What do you mean when you say that? Oh, that's the question. I thought it was a bit more complex than that, but there you go.
No, it's a good question. I think the point of a poster like that is not so much to reveal my intentions as it is to provoke that question, because in a way, Real Australians say welcome is a nonsensical statement, because if there is such a thing as a real Australian, that implies a boundary between Australians and non-Australians. And if in order to be a member of that group, you need to eliminate the boundary, it's completely circular. And I, designed the phrase that way because it's really just there to provoke discussion about nationhood, belonging, and what these things constitute. Because, I mean, I'm not an open borders guy.
That's good to hear.
Well, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, I think
I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I don't like open borders. Sorry, keep going.
No, it's kind of moral posturing to say that, because it's a sort of point of view which is typically espoused by people that risk nothing by saying that. The people who face the consequences of relaxed immigration are people at the bottom of the labour market. And so I think that, the way we talk about immigration is the problem is that it gets caught up with identity.
It does. It's identitarianism at some level.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it was discussed in terms of economics, it would be a lot more straightforward in some ways. But it's because nothing has that kick of sort of identity politics, of ethnicity and race and religion. These things sort of are so much more emotional than just talking about straight up economics. And so the poster is there. So the way I describe my work is that it is art disguised as propaganda. It looks like propaganda. It looks like it's deliberately, that poster is almost fascistic in how certain of itself it is. Like there's no room, like the text takes up all the poster. There's no room for anything else. The text is shouting at its audience. And it's really there to create discussion more than anything else. I mean, but that being said, I mean, the reason why I chose that phrase is because there are other phrases like "fuck off, we're full," that sort of that.
I didn't expect you to say that. Sorry.
Yeah,
keep going.
From the other side of, and I see that sort of point of view as being, it vandalizes what it means to be Australian in some sense, to be that sort of xenophobic. I think we are. It's one of our great characteristics that we are a welcoming country, and that sort of should be protected in some sense. I don't know how, but it's just, I think at the time that I started that campaign, it was that poster that really sort of blew up and found a lot of following. It's because there was sort of this rising feeling of xenophobia at the time, and it was tied in with the terrorist attacks that were happening at the time, and just the sort of the emergence of ISIS, and there was just a great sort of groundswell of fear, and I sort of saw that corroding our sense of identity, so of Australian identity. So that's sort of what motivated it more generally.
Yeah. Can I push back a bit on that?
Yeah.
All right. Hang on. It's responding. Yeah. So I was going to say that Australians, generally speaking, are known for their, what's the word, larrikinism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that phrase, "fuck off, we're full," as hurtful as and xenophobic as that may come off, one of your other posters is "be as offensive as possible." So that doesn't reconcile on that level. And as I said, I'm a first generation Australian. My heritage, my blood is not Australian. It's Latin. But I don't think it is wise to, and you did say, to your credit, that you're not open borders or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't think it's xenophobic to want the creme de la creme of immigration here, because if we're so xenophobic, why do we have 25 million people now in this country, where we are embracing these people, but now house prices have gone up because of the Chinese, I suppose you could say, and that's just one group. I love Chinese food. I love Chinese people. I don't need to say all of that. Like that statement stands on its own. But where is the xenophobia? Because all we've done is accept people, humanitarianism. The Australian government accepts people, the Rohingya people, the white South African farmers at some level. Like, so where, in your view, is the xenophobia? Because I was allowed here, my mum and dad were allowed here. Like, and that's just a personal anecdote.
To the question, where is the xenophobia? I think it's in all of us.
On some level, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like it's impossible to make art which attempts to speak across the divide, the political divide, without understanding what it means to be conservative. And so I trying to find how to express this, that I think everyone is conservative.
Take your time.
Yeah. And everyone's, especially at a certain, after midnight, when you're tired and you see some terrible video, you become more conservative. People become fearful. I mean, something that's interesting is how people really love borders with this whole COVID thing, don't they? I mean, it's disease makes people more conservative and more sort of protective of borders, and it really, to me, I've always thought that xenophobia is a fear of the other, is really has its roots in not so much sort of the violence of the other, but in their potential to carry disease. Because, think about sort of deep evolutionary past. Another tribe comes up to your tribe. They're dangerous in terms of they might kill you and take your resources. But the very first thing, the mysterious thing, the thing which is so provoking of paranoia is, well, last time that tribe came up here, half of us died mysteriously, and we don't know why, because we're millennia away from discovering the science necessary to understand germs and viruses. And so that's I'm very skeptical of the sort of the notion that all racism and xenophobia is just based on ignorance. I think it is very deeply within us. And it's the sort of thing that it takes a lot of effort to overcome. And so that goes back to your question, really, is that I really think being welcoming towards the other and overcoming a more sort of, xenophobic, bigoted, racist impulses, it's something that each of us has a responsibility to do. I'm not puritanical in that sense. I don't think it can ever be overcome. I think that it is in all of us, and it's more... it's closer to the notion of sin than it is to something that can be eradicated. I always get irritated when people share slogans like "end racism." It's like saying "end violence." It's never going to end. And so, that's the way I think of my posters. It is an attempt to remind people that it's their responsibility to watch their own behavior, but it's not to the aim of purifying our society, because I don't think that's. And I think that trying to sort of purify things in that way is actually completely counterproductive.
Fair enough. Do you have are you if you were to sort of judge yourself on what we consider to be, and I believe it to be more of a social construct. I don't consider myself left, right, center. I just don't look at the whole thing. I'm just an individual. But if you were to put yourself on the political compass, where would you put yourself?
I try not to. I mean, I think
I'm the same.
I think
but we lean different ways on the social construct of it. But sorry, keep going.
Sure. I think if we compare the two of us, I'd say that I'm more left than you are in some ways.
Absolutely. I'm not debating that, though. I'm just saying I don't abide by the social construct of the political compass. Yeah. But yes, right. Obviously you're more left than I am, and I'm obviously more right. That's fine. But sorry, keep answering. Yeah.
I try not to place myself, because I think in order to be effective in doing what I do, I really need to get as close as I can to the people whose views I oppose, because I'm essentially asking them to do the same for me. I'm saying, I want you to look at it from my perspective. And in order to do that, I need to show that I'm willing to go as close as I can and sort of try to get inside the mindset of somebody who I disagree with. And I have to do it in order to come up with ideas, in order to sort of communicate across that invisible boundary that divides us. I mean, that's not to say that it's all just, artful communication. There are real disagreements, because people have different stakes in different things. People have different advantages in things either staying the same or changing, and so I sort of see it as negotiation. I don't think it's the peace is always negotiated, and the peace is always a compromise to some extent. So I don't place myself, and I enjoy that because it allows me to come to it with fresh eyes as much as possible.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do is, because the only reason I asked that political question, one, I know the audience was interested, but two is because, as I said before, I purposely now, after a lot of evolution and behind the scenes stuff, I've realized that I'm not, yes, I lean right, but I don't want to identify with the political compass because we are so layered. One of your artworks I found to be pretty, what one would consider to be a right-wing value. And that's not to shit on the left. That's just what I believe. Here you say, please be offensive. Often on the right, they say facts don't care about your feelings. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, be offensive. Like, you're going to hurt people's feelings anyway. I probably hurt people's feelings all the time without even trying. That's something that a right winger would say. There's the one that I was looking for before, real Australians say welcome. And then this one I find also personal responsibility. This is definitely a right-wing value. It's my own responsibility and I'm going to fix it. So do you want to sort of talk through that one?
Yeah, I find that they're popular with left-wing people as much as they are with right-wing people.
See, that surprises me, but I'm happy to learn that. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is with art is people really every artwork is a mirror in so many ways. Is that people see what they want to see. If they want conflict, they'll find it. And I try to create posters that people that think they disagree can find a way of agreeing on the fundamentals. And I think the one that you have shown now about sort of the sense of meaning that you get from life, and it isn't from your happiness or your possessions. It is so much from your the sacrifices you create. I'm just conscious of saying things that are going to appeal to you as a Christian, but
you won't offend me if you start like slamming my savior. I might say something.
I'm not afraid of offending you. I'm just sort of I'm just conscious of that I'm saying things that are in line with your worldview. But
okay.
I just think that sense of ownership over your own life. I mean, one thing I don't do with any of my works is fetishize oppression or victimhood, because I think that it's sort of it claims to help people and it actually makes them weaker. And I
agree completely.
I just think that it's very people are very mysterious, and you can't be sure that you are actually helping people, or that is even what you're trying to do to some extent. I just think that you need to watch yourself very carefully when you feel that you are helping people. There's sort of there's almost a there's a cruelty that is hidden within compassion, and it's cruelty masquerading as compassion.
I love that. That's really smart. Yeah, that's true.
But and we all know this because we've all felt it. But then when it happens en masse, it's I don't know. We think that it doesn't apply to those situations, but there's nothing. I've never sort of. It's very. These things have become very abstract when you start sort of discussing it sort of generally. It's easy to talk about it in specifics, but I try to draw those things out of my posters because I mean ultimately I'm an artist. I'm on the left because art it's about change and imagination and sort of imagining how things might be better and therefore criticizing the present. But I see that it is fundamentally about negotiating with the present, also and negotiating with tradition and with what of the past we want to bring forward, and rather than just sort of being a total revolutionary and sort of succumbing to all the vanity within that mind frame. That sort of Sorry.
No. I love what you just said about that compassion can be disguised as is disguised cruelty. Like, that's a really interesting perception. You should give up this art stuff and become a philosopher. No.
Well, I mean, there's
elements of that in what you're doing anyway, right?
Well, there's elements of that on. You can, I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, I can't sort of. I mean, that's something that happens within Christianity to some extent. I mean, I mean, you could probably say that those people aren't real Christians, but I mean, Christianity is all about compassion, and therefore it can be used as, or we're doing this to help you. But it can be. But that wasn't really what I meant when I said that. That compassion is sometimes cruelty masquerading as compassion. But I mean, it's just if you make compassion sort of a value which can't be examined, and what I'm trying to get at here.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm just. That's why I enjoy these sort of conversations when you're allowed to actually, think. I don't really like, as you're talking, I don't really have a script which I like to sort of deploy. I mean, I have the posters, but these things.
I'm not limiting or restricting your speech. I don't understand why you're struggling. You can say what you like. If I find it offensive or whatever, I'll be like, oh, hey, maybe not. But like,
No,
I feel like you're really overly thinking your responses. It's okay. I promise.
I'm just apologizing for rambling because it's kind of complicated things. I don't. I wish I could. Articulate it more clearly, but I just think it's complicated stuff. So yeah.
That's all right. One of my viewers, Valerie, says Christianity is not all about compassion. That's true. We're a bit of hard love. Like, sometimes you need to be cruel to be kind.
There's a pretty strong streak of compassion in there, though, isn't there? I mean,
well, yeah, there is. That's true as well. You're not wrong about that either. But yeah, Christianity is quite a layered thing. Wait, where was the question that I saw? Hang on. Oh, here we go. So this is Sandy Turner. He's the greatest human being alive. Sandy Turner asks, where do you think your art will go from here, Peter? So what are your next projects?
Well, I don't like to sort of talk about what I'm about to do because it's sort of.
Oh, you don't want to jinx it?
No, it's sort of when you create an art project, so much of it is of learning from. I guess I don't want to jinx it in some respect because you put an art project out into the world and it's all about learning from the response because it's interesting to see how people react and so when I create a new project, I just. Yeah, ultimately it's motivated by curiosity about how people are going to respond to it. So, but I've never really thought about what I do as being political. I always think of it as being personal in some respect, and so I want to get back to that in some way. But anyway, I'm going to slip back into thinking out loud. So I'll keep it short and just say I'm not sure.
Okay. So Pissy Leaks Pete, do you believe that the power of the meme would be the new art to portray current issues? That's a good question, Pissy.
That's a great question. I mean, I love memes, and I mean, there's a lot of terrible memes, but it's a terrific way. It's a terrific way of thinking about culture. The idea of a meme was created by Richard Dawkins. He was talking about culture. It was a metaphor really for understanding culture in the way that we understand biology.
Yeah. No, I don't like Dawkins. Sorry, I was thinking of the wrong person. Sorry, keep going.
But in some sense, all culture can be, you could understand it as sort of big collections of memes. And so it's not, in some ways, it's super interesting. In another way, it does strip the spirit out of culture in that it makes culture completely mechanical and there's nothing luminous about it. There's nothing, there's nothing otherworldly about it, or mysterious or imaginative. It becomes completely mechanical, and which is what Dawkins does. That's sort of his trick.
Richard Dawkins, the atheist?
Yeah, he created.
Why are you talking about him as an artist? Sorry, what?
No, Richard Dawkins created the idea of the meme.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah. I missed that part. Sorry. Yeah.
In his book, The Selfish Gene, he said, well, look, all biological life is about gene replication. We have genes, and they are trying to replicate, and our bodies are essentially gene machines, which are genes built in order for them to replicate. Mm-hmm. And then he said, sort of, maybe all human culture is just a reflection of that.
Gotcha. Sorry, I did hear you say that. Yeah.
So, and I think it's quite funny that here's Richard Dawkins, this world famous biologist, and now he created this idea about memes, and the most popular and sort of recognized example of his idea are just shit posting on the internet. That's what we think of when we think of meme.
That is.
Yeah, and so it's that's not exactly the greatest culture there is. It's sort of very low entry culture. It's the sort of stuff that's super easy to make, and it doesn't. I've never seen a meme and it's really sort of restored my faith in humanity. It's always just something. It's always about sort of stripping meaning away from something, rather than it's never edifying in any way. So I don't know. No. But I think it's an interesting way to look at culture as being a big pattern and being sort of mechanical in some way. So yeah.
I don't know if this is a disrespectful question. I can't tell, because sometimes I'm a bit oblivious to things that are supposed to be rude or offensive. So I apologize in advance, but this is a question. Is that a rude question or is that a normal question?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't.
Okay.
I
wasn't sure. Yeah.
The closest I've come to having a government grant is I've done a couple actually, a mentorship in which it's a government grant that goes to me and another artist to have a mentorship. And I've done that twice, totaling like $2,000, and that's the only money I've taken from the government in my entire career. Everything else is just me selling posters, and as I was saying to you before, I sort of work on the side. So, and I don't like taking money from the government, because I don't like begging. I don't like having to write out grant application to some committee. There's no way any of my art would exist if I had to go through a committee, because they'd say, Peter, you can't stick up these posters illegally. So, I mean, I understand that other artists need the government in order to survive, and that's fine. I don't sort of fault them for it, but it's just impossible for my temperament to do that. I need to be independent. And so, yeah. Well, it is actually, I don't do it out of principle. I do it out of just stubborn independence. Like, it's just my stubborn temperament.
Well, unfortunately, taking money from the government is very much a far right and far left thing. So if we're gonna pay both sides out, I'll pay them both out. Sandy Turner, best human being in the world. Does art have boundaries? Is it confined by societal constraints?
Of course.
Good question, Sandy.
I mean, the art world in so many ways is controlled by institutions that have only existed for, in most cases, less than 100 years. The first public art gallery in the world was the Louvre, and that was created, as a classic Enlightenment creation. It was the art collection, and the building belonged to the French royal family. And then the sort of Enlightenment-inspired revolutionaries took it over and opened it up to the people. And so the very first public art museum was created. And so art in so many ways is kind of a religion unto itself. But it depends on the state. It depends on these institutions that pay for it. And sort of, and I guess if it were a religion, it would be making faith out of making the imagination sacred. So, but without institutions, it doesn't exist. It's either in those institutions or it's in the market. So, yeah, so it's either glorifying the market or it's glorifying the state to some extent.
Yes, it would be glorifying the market or the state. That's probably true. I know the question wasn't directed to me, Sandy, at all, but one thing I would not like art to do is be pornographic in nature or like be offensive to Christ, but everyone has a right to do what they want to do. So that's the part that free will. Free will.
How do you create those? I mean, how do you pick those boundaries? Does the faith get to choose what the boundary is, or should that society? Because you see where I'm going with this. Because
no, I completely. This is where free speech comes in, and in this case, free expression. Each to their own, right? Like everyone's allowed to do what they want. But if I ran an art gallery, I wouldn't have pornographic type stuff in my art gallery, and I wouldn't have anything that was offensive. I mean, you take offense, right? You choose to take offense. So even though I wouldn't find it offensive, I wouldn't want something that disrespects, that's a better way to put it, that disrespects. Like, for example, there's a TV show that I used to watch quite a while ago. It's called The L Word. So it's a lesbian show. And this woman runs an art gallery, but she did real human people as art, or like it was real videos. And they had Mary, the mother of Christ. No, sorry, they had Mary Magdalene. I think it was Mary Magdalene bent over, and you could see her. She was like on all fours. And then they had Jesus doing her from behind. That's not art. That's just moronic.
A little crass.
Like, sorry?
It's a little crass.
Well, yeah, it is. It just, I don't find that artistic. I understand it's shock and awe. That I get. And the woman was pretty and the guy was like nice and fit, but like, that's not really Jesus. That's not really her. So there's no reason for me to get so offended. But the idea that someone would want to do that is horrible. Like, I just don't like it. But that's me. Like, that's not you. You might be fine with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone is different. Everyone, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, if someone wants to create art like that and then sell it in a private gallery, then that's fine. But if it's in a public institution, then there is some, I guess there's some responsibility to, I don't know, you need to at least listen to the audience. And if the audience says, we find this offensive, we prefer that it's removed, then there's some obligation to at least listen. But if someone wants to privately make art that is totally offensive, then and it doesn't actually hurt any of the people who make it, then that's fine. But yeah, I can see why you'd be upset by the one you mentioned.
Yeah, I was. I did not like it. I was annoyed. This is bearing. This question is, if someone makes a really artistic looking rubber vagina, is that art?
Maybe, I don't know. If you put it in a gallery, look, there's really there are no there are really no there are no restrictions on what is an art. It's sort of it's a good art.
Is it good art? If it looks real, it must be, because that's attention to detail.
There's an artist called Jeff Koons. He's probably the richest artist in the world. And he does these big. His thing is banality. He does these big shiny baubles and balloon dogs, which are made out of stainless steel, and sells them for millions of dollars. He's an American guy.
Wow.
He used to be a not a stockbroker, but a commodities trader on Wall Street. So he understands how to make money for sure. But anyway, he back in the late 80s, he had a body of work which was all extremely pornographic. It was just photographs, sculptures, paintings of him having sex with his wife, and totally explicit.
Yeah, very graphic it sounds.
And it bombed in so many ways because it was too, the avant-garde art world. It believes itself to be without boundaries, but the boundaries are still there. It's just they go right up to the edge and then shy away from it. And because sex is sacred in so many ways. There is something about it which we can't sort of explain materially. It doesn't. And you try to, and you make fun of it in art and say, "Hey, look, it's just me having sex with my wife," and that's the painting. And we are repulsed by that. And so it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of good art in a way because it shows us where the boundary actually is, or that the boundary is inside of us, but, that we can sort of feel that it's there's something sacred in what's being violated in the art. And so I don't know. You can say that things are bad, but if it's done with an intention of revealing what is good, then that is successful art in some ways. So, but yeah, about the vagina, I mean, that sort of answers Baron's question in a very roundabout way.
Yeah, that question really made me laugh. Valerie Marcatonatos. Is Peter familiar with Bindi Kulchakka? Actually, Valerie, by the way, I've met Bindi Kulchakka on several occasions. The conservative Aboriginal in part artist. If so, what are his thoughts on her? Thank you, Valerie, for the suggestion.
No, I do not know Bindi.
Bindi, yeah, she's cool.
I'll have to have a look. And
well, look her up on your end quickly. But she's a Christian. She has a really beautiful testimony. But she went to England. I can't remember what she did that landed her in prison, but she ended up in prison. But when she left prison, she went back to Australia and was actively embraced by the left. She was known as a leftist artist. She paints, she sculpts, she does all these different things. And then slowly she started transitioning out of the mindset. I'm not saying that you have this mindset, and you and I have both said that we're more individualist than on the spectrum of the political compass. But she started transitioning out of being a leftist and became a born-again Christian. And pretty much part of her whole spiel is that there's no place in the world of art for someone who is a Christian, for someone who is pro-life, for someone who is right-wing. Art seems to be monopolized by the left. And I don't think she's wrong. Maybe you can correct me on that. But that wasn't the question. Sorry. Oh, yeah, you're not aware of her. So, yeah, that's part of her story. What do you think of that?
That sounds very interesting. And, I mean, I can understand how she'd have that perspective. And I can't sort of, I need to find out more about her work. But
For sure. She's great.
What can I say about that? It's just... Yeah, I mean, she's right in some ways that, but yeah, I know you've got to understand what art is historically, that it's not just this neutral thing. It's sort of part of, this wave of liberalism that is getting to its terminal stage and becoming completely absurd. So yeah, I mean, I guess the quality of her art would be, I'd wonder whether it is sort of making that statement, or whether is she just making straight up Christian art for Christian people, which is fine. But it would be interesting. I
think it's a mix of things. Are you pro-life?
No. I mean, like
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my view on
sorry. Sorry, that came out of nowhere. I just thought I'd ask.
No, that's definitely one of the fault lines. Hey, I mean, that's sort of it's one of these things. Like, abortion is such a good one to talk about in some ways, because I mean, the first thing I'd say about that is that, like any political discussion, it becomes sort of absurdly doctrinal, or on one side it's like all life is sacred. On the other side, it's like cluster of cells. You know?
Oh,
like,
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and
that's
and
exactly how it's perceived.
I think there are all kinds of reasons for getting an abortion. I think that some of those reasons are completely valid, and I think there have to be some people getting abortions for reasons that are bad reasons, or at least reasons that are less valid than others. But,
Yes,
I mean,
that I would agree with, I suppose.
and I guess so.
I'd just
Within
say
that,
keep your legs closed unless you were raped. I'd say keep your legs closed.
well, I think, and it
I
becomes
mean, I wouldn't say that to a woman's face, but I'm saying it now.
it becomes about sort of what role does the state have, and whether
And they don't.
Sorry.
And they don't. The state has no place in marriage. The state has no place in your body. The state has no place in your family. Like, that would be my argument. Sorry, keep going.
Right. So, and therefore, yeah. And so figure out how to pass it. But the thing is, political change isn't really made by people who have like balanced perspectives. It's made by the extremists who are saying the thing like all life is sacred, or
Cluster cells, yeah.
Cluster cells. You know, it's those people that are pushing that sort of. In some sense, it's the it's not true. Like the same can be said for the marriage equality debate. Like that was for the longest time, it was born this way was the perspective of what it is that makes someone gay or lesbian, is that they were simply it was in their genes, or it was so completely out of their control. But you speak to any gay person and it's a mix of things. There is sort of a part of them feels gay, and it is also their environment that sort of moves them in a certain direction. That's sort of the truth of people's experiences if you speak to them. But that's politically inconvenient because the message of simply born this way is more politically powerful. And so it just makes me wonder about, you know, the role of truth in creating political change, because I'm totally sort of in support of gay people getting married, but the way in which you sort of win that debate, it was done, and like any political debate, really, it's more effective when you have simple things that aren't quite true that sort of get the job done politically. Anyway, it's yeah, and I just wondered what you thought of that.
Oh, of what you just stated?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're turning it around on me. What do I think of what exactly? About the way the same-sex debate happened, or about the way my thoughts on same-sex marriage? What specifically about what you said do you want me to respond to? I'll just talk and you tell me if it covers anything that you said. Okay. Oh, he's turning the show back around on me, cheeky. No. Okay. So obviously, because I am a Christian, and obviously I have a mind of my own, I do think for myself. But there are many Christians that think gays today should still be killed for being gay. That's ridiculous.
So comparatively, you're a very open-minded Christian compared to that, I guess.
Oh, I love gay people. As a community, they piss me off. I don't collectively. I don't understand why the gay agenda is being put into the Safe Schools program, and why kids need to learn about transgenderism, and why that's even being taught. That they should learn that with their parents, or with that shouldn't be taught in schools. But I don't want gay people to be hurt. I've even made videos on my YouTube channel saying Muslims stop throwing gay people off the roofs, leave them alone. I don't agree with it on that level. So if I'm gonna say that I love gay people, that would be true. But if I'm gonna say that gay people should also have the same heterosexual rights in terms of marriage, I would say that no, it's not the same. I would say that a man and a woman, more often than not, can reproduce and have a baby, and that's literally. And if you don't want to put the God element into it, you could just say completely biologically, completely naturally, that they should be able to have their union recognized at some level at a legal capacity. But the word marriage, that word specifically, belongs to the heterosexual, those who are heterosexual, because it is a heteronormative society, because that's the majority. But I would say that they can have another word, and that they should, not be harmed in any way or anything like that. I also don't like the way we came to legalize it in this country, based purely on the fact that the no votes were, the no commercials weren't even allowed. And people were saying, let's burn down churches, and people were stealing from letterboxes. Anything to do with no, you're Satan, automatically you're Hitler. If you said that you don't believe in gay marriage, and you happen to be the daughter of two gay dads, and you said it didn't matter what the context was, there were virtue signalers going, oh, you're a horrible, bad person. And that's what really bothers me. I don't think people who necessarily don't agree with gay marriage are always bad people. Even this guy here, Bearing, he made a pretty great video on why he would vote no. Helva says hips were degenerate. But yeah, so that's my sort of response to what you kind of asked. I don't know if that covered anything, but I hope that gives you context as to my feelings towards them. Because as I said, I'm an individualist. I treat, love thy neighbor. I treat people as I want to be treated. But yeah, so I have no issues with gay people unless they're doing something bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
But that's the same with any human.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think that if a gay couple is married, and the status of that word being given to a gay couple, it's actually a vote of confidence in the family, and it allows them to have equal status. I mean, I think that if you are a conservative, one of the best ways you can be a conservative is in defense of the family.
Yeah, I agree.
And so wouldn't it be... I mean, it's not really something I think about on a daily basis, but I can imagine if you were a gay couple living in a society that says your union is equal to that of in status, equal to that of a heterosexual couple, that's going to...
It isn't, though.
Yeah, that's fundamentally it, isn't it? That you'd say that their union is not equal.
It's not equal, because I'm talking about just practical realities. Just practical reality. Their love might be amazing. They might love each other very much. I'm not taking that away from them. I don't take that away from them at all. But it isn't the same. And it's like men and women. We're not equal. That's not a bad thing. We're different. That's great. I can't probably win in an arm wrestle against you, but that's fine. Like, we're different, but that doesn't mean we have to hate them.
Yeah, no, I think we're both not hating them.
No. Yeah. But you're saying that the status, they can use the word marriage, but it's like if I started saying the N-word, N-I-G-G, and then a black person heard me and slapped me across the face for saying it, that's their word. They've allocated that for them. So why can't heterosexuals have the word marriage allocated for them, and why can't gays use the word united or marriage with an S in front of it for same-sex marriage? I don't know. I just made that up.
Well, I guess the answer to your question is because a majority of heterosexual people have decided that they're willing to share it.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
But yeah, should we talk about something else?
Yeah, let's talk about something else. So this is Reverend Bob Payne Ministries. I would probably call him like my Aussie grandpa. I used to go to his house every Sunday and help him with his sermons. Virtue and vice. No, you're fine. Virtue and vice, are they meaningful in your life? I'm assuming he's asking you and not anyone in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I mean, I'm not sort of a Christian in the sense that I believe in because in order to really be a Christian, you need to believe in the
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, the virgin birth, that Jesus rose from the dead, and that he was literally the Son of God. And I'd say that I don't believe in any of those things, but in so many ways,
fair enough.
so therefore disqualified.
Yeah.
But I think in so many ways, I'm culturally Christian, and how could I not be living in the Western world, living with the privilege of the institutions that make this country what it is? So, and just culturally, virtue and vice are very useful concepts for. It comes back to the quote you were saying at the beginning about the flesh and the spirit, because here's one way of putting it is to say that what a trap that I guess progressives fall into is to locate all the evil of the world outside of themselves. They locate it in concepts such as patriarchy or fascism or racism, misogyny, something which is not in them. It's out there. It's in those other people that are saying the bad words, doing the bad things, being offensive. It's never within themselves. And because, they're pure. And so what I appreciate more than anything in religion is the self examination, that the potential for evil is always, the most dangerous potential for evil is always within the self. And so that's something I think about, and it's just something that's missing from the secular world. There's no adequate replacement for that. So yeah, I do think about those things.
Yeah, well, hope that answers your question, Bob Payne. Do you want to read it?
So I've minimized my.
Do you want me to read it to you? No, I'll read it to you because are you struggling with your eyes? So you think it's okay if art pushes degeneracy? I don't know if he's asking that to you or if that was to someone else in the chat, but yeah, is it okay for art to push degeneracy?
Is it like Elvis's hips?
Yeah, I think so. But that's not, I don't even know why that's degenerate. I mean, now that's not even a thing. Like, we wouldn't care today.
That's not so funny.
Yeah.
It's sort of, well, what is degeneracy? I don't
know. You're an atheist or you're not a believer, so your definition will be different to mine. But go ahead. Is it okay?
Well, you're a Protestant.
Yes.
Protestantism is a degeneration from Catholicism. I mean, we're on a continuum that started with Martin Luther.
Is insulting.
No, you understand my point. That's not my point of view, but I'm saying that.
No, you're fine.
That is certainly the point of view of Catholics to some extent, is that that Catholicism is what is real Christianity. I mean, every Christian, every religious person thinks that their interpretation is the right one. But
unfortunately, that's true. But Mormons are just crazy. No, sorry, keep going.
But I don't know. It's to be an artist and to believe in culture to some extent is to think that changing, looking back at tradition and changing things, there's always potential to find something new and interesting and better in that. So, just labeling it all as being degenerate is just kind of silly. Like it's worth taking risks with culture, and as long as you don't have the idea that simply tearing things down is always good, because it plainly isn't.
No, I think I agree with that. Let's see if there are any more good questions. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap up. Well, if you have 1 hour and 20 minutes so far, that's not too bad. I didn't even go through all my questions. Like, we went on so many tangents. I was going to ask you, one of my questions was. No, it was good. I know you didn't want to go all into the art and all into the politics, so I sort of tried to keep it as balanced as I possibly could. One of my questions, though, was, what did I write here? What is the fascination with Monga Khan, and why the mission to make him an Aussie folk hero? Because I read somewhere that you want to do historic fiction. You wanted to do a historical fiction around a particular person, and that to me is not really history. Then it's like There are revisionists for history out there because they don't like that history isn't being accurately learnt, and so for you to create a historic fiction around someone seems a little bit, for lack of a better word, silly.
Well, it's an exercise in mythology, and I think that's fine as long as you say that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sort of, there's something, there's something special about mythology, about fiction, that it opens up your mind to empathizing with the past in some ways, because I don't know, if you read factual but really rational history, it is so incredibly boring, because all looking backwards to the past is always an imaginative act. I mean, that's true of the Bible, because you are imagining, you're interpreting, for starters, you're interpreting the text, but you're imagining what it was like to be those people. You're trying to imagine what it was that they felt. And so in saying Monga Khan was an Aussie, what was it like to be him? It actually gives you permission to empathize with him in a way which straight up rational history doesn't, because it doesn't allow for the scope of the imagination. So that's why I did that. But the reason why I picked him is because he chose to live, work, and die here despite the government's racist policy. And I think that he, to me, is like that impulse of wanting to belong here and working for it is more admirable than the impulse of the people who wrote the White Australia policy and tried to keep the country white. I just think that race in general is a stupid idea, and it's it doesn't protect values in a way. There are better mechanisms for protecting values rather than just
for protecting race. Yeah. Don't you think though that it's unusual that every Western nation, say England, New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada, even Spain and France, and all of these European descended countries are so, everyone come here, enter us. Why isn't anyone running to Muslim countries? Why isn't anyone running to Japan? Why isn't anyone running to Sudan? Why is it the responsibility of the European white world to embrace these people? I think the word race preservation has become a dirty word, but it's not a dirty word. Because of the lack of race preservation, we no longer have Mayans. We no longer have Aztecs. We may no longer have Amazonians soon. The left is doing everything in their power to hate on the president of Brazil and be like, he's a bad guy, blah, blah, the poor Amazonians. The Amazonians want to assimilate in society. They don't want to be protected. But so how do you respond to that? Because a bit of race preservation, a bit of White Australia policy I'm saying this, I'm half Colombian. I'd be in the 1950s in America, I'd be on the back of that bus. But I think people have that right to want to preserve their nationhood at some level. I still think a bit of immigration is okay, but how do you respond to what I've just said?
Yeah, it's the reasons for why you do it. I mean, if you straight up say that we want to stop immigration because we want to keep Australia white, it's the wrong reason for doing.
But it's the right of that. Those people are allowed to do that, even if you don't like it and I don't like it.
Australia, if they had an election tomorrow and everyone came out and voted and say, let's bring in the White Australia policy, there's no real the only reasons for doing that would be, if you read the sorry, I was going to take on another tangent, but just try and keep it directly to your question. I think that there are good reasons for limiting immigration, but they are the best reasons are economic. And if you try to, the whole idea of the nation state is to sort of overcome these bad ideas, these old ideas that are essentially versions of tribalism, and race is just a really low resolution of that. So if you if you fall into the trap of arguing along those lines, you lose the argument before it's even started. If you want, because it's, well,
like I'm Colombian, right? So say like a lot of my audience used to say to me, my own audience used to say to me, deport Dia, deport her back to Colombia. I'm like, I can go back to Colombia. I speak fluent Spanish. It's fine. But Colombia is full of Colombians. There's very few white people there. By white, I don't mean like, I mean like I would be considered white there. But what I mean is like not you, blue-eyed, brown hair, like that level. So, but they have that. They don't have much immigration there. Neither does Japan. So how does, I don't get how it ruins it. What do you mean?
What I mean is, yeah, it's difficult to describe. I mean, I should be able to describe.
It is tricky. It is tricky to describe. I understand. I'm sorry, Phil.
No, I just, I think there are good reasons for limiting immigration, and they are economic reasons. Those are the best reasons. That's the best way to sort of to win that argument, because if you make it simply about race, then that sort of devolves into just straight up racism. And the whole idea.
I see what you're trying to say.
Yeah, well, it's the idea in having a nation is that the nation itself is is what's most important, and the freedoms that nation protects, and and the sense of equality and sort of a balance of values. But if it simply becomes about racial essentialism, then that's sort of the end of civilization, really. I mean, when you just have people going into their separate camps and saying, well, we're white, you're black, and everyone divides up, that doesn't end well for anybody. And so it's, there needs to be a better alternative to doing that. So I think it's very easy to sort of fall into that trap, because someone like someone of your persuasion, someone more conservative, can see people on the left falling into these more identitarian thought patterns and political strategies, and the natural impulse is to say, well, those people are proud of their race. Why can't I be proud of my race and define myself by my race? And so it gets into this cycle whereby their bad behavior promotes your bad behavior, promotes their bad behavior, and the whole thing sort of devolves. And I just think, fundamentally, I think that if you really think that your race is the best thing about you, then you're kind of a loser, because
I agree. Yeah,
really,
that statement I do agree, because you can't control that you were born in that body. It's not your fault you're black. It's not your fault you're Indian. It's not your fault you're Chinese. It's not my fault I'm Latina. Yeah, I got you. That statement I agree with completely.
Ultimately, these things are happening in the Western world because the West is in a state of spiritual poverty, because it's sort of losing touch with the larger spiritual ideas that are meant to bring people of different ethnicities together. And so, I mean, that was the idea of creating the nation state, that it would sort of shift the that sacred nucleus from religion into the state, and the state could sort of protect it in some sense. And the state would become a substitute for God. And it just sort of it looks like it's falling apart. But I just think slipping back into tribalism, in which we think that sort of race is the most important thing, is pretty much, I couldn't think of anything worse, really.
One of the insane hermit wants me to ask him if Japanese people are racist for not immigrating. Ask him if Japanese are racist for not immigrating non-Japanese. Oh, okay.
I think I'm getting at. Yeah, huh? I think. I mean, the simplest answer to that is that everybody is racist.
I am. When I'm driving and I'm behind like a slow driver, I always assume it's a nation.
What do I assume? Yeah,
or an old person. But hey, I'm admitting it. I'm admitting that out loud, everyone. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, it's the notion that we can't that anyone is not racist at all, or that people don't see race. It's kind of
No, I see race, but I think it's
absurd. Yeah,
everyone's different. Everyone's beautiful.
Yeah, everyone sees it,
Or
obviously. But it really comes down to, is it the most important thing? Like, is that the best thing about you? It's the same with
this is
people.
the most important thing. This is the most important.
Well,
the word of God.
Well, of course, I knew you would say something like that, and
Of course, that's a pretty predictable response from a Christian.
well, that's one of the things that I enjoy talking to religious people about. Is that any problem that you talk up there, that you sort of bring up, in the back of their mind, they're already thinking, well, you know what the solution to that is?
Christ.
Or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
But there is a lot of truth to that. Not, in my opinion, not that specifically, like not that, whether it be Jesus or Muhammad or whatnot. It's more there's a necessity for some sort of higher value, higher than the state, higher than materialism. There are all these secular substitutes for faith that just sort of that last a while, but then they fall flat. So yeah.
Oh, I just got $5. Thanks, Insane Hermit. What's the $5 for? Oh, okay. Well, you're really on this subject, Pete. Just let it go, Insane. Peter, so you want all races to mix away and destroy all diversity? I don't think he said that, but go ahead, respond. Thank you for the $5.
I don't care too much. I just think that what can I say to that? Yeah, it's not something to worry about. You're talking about thousands upon thousands of years. I mean, it will create different sorts of people.
Is it okay for some people to actively, consciously go out of their way to preserve their culture? So I would say someone like Halle Berry is beautiful. Like I have no problem with race mixing, but I do like the idea of, like, if there was such a thing as Atlanteans or the Mayans, like they're gone now, they're extinct. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Even the pygmies that were here before the Aboriginals, they're gone. Like. It would be so race preservation on some level is important, right? Or does the physicality of it not even matter? I suppose do you understand? I think that's maybe what he's trying to ask.
Yeah.
I'm a product of race mixing, and I sort of get the race preservation element of it. I don't think everyone has to actively do it, but if there's a portion of people doing it, then that's good because it keeps that going. And that's fine. Yeah.
Look, it sort of comes back to, look, you can sleep with whoever you want and have beautiful mixed babies. I think that's great. What I want is for more people to have kids because I like kids and I don't really care what they look like. But yeah, I just think
a child is a child.
Yeah, but it comes back to what I was saying before about what you think is most important. I mean, sure, but preserve your culture, absolutely, and your race, if that's important to you, fine. But is it the most important thing? Is it really the best thing about you? Is the color of your skin? Surely, it's your capacity to, first of all, it's your behavior, but it's your capacity to love other people. That's a spiritual value, and if your notion of your race is getting in the way of that, because you want to preserve your race, but this other person of another race is very attractive, and I think I might be falling in love with them. That's kind of a stupid point of view to have. So it really comes back to having some sort of higher spiritual value, which is more important than some silly idea of preserving your race.
Part of what I can take from what you're saying that I do agree with is, like, how for some people it's like, oh, I'm a vegan, or hi, I'm transgendered, or hi, I'm gay, or like, it's like, why not? Why? Yeah, it's similar to what you're saying with color, right? So what if that's the most important thing about you, then like, what kind of why are you valuing yourself based on a predilection or based on color. I happen to be a woman, but I don't go, oh, hey, I'm a woman. Like I say, oh,
Yeah,
hi,
yeah.
I'm Dia. I'm Dia, and I'm a Christian, and I'm a friend, and I like to do puzzles, and like I like politics and history. Like there's so we are better on merit than we are on these false identities. Would you say that? Would you agree with what you're saying and also apply it to homosexuality and to all these other what's the word that they use?
I get what you're saying. I see it as much. I see it on the left and on the right, and I think it's particularly interesting because it makes you wonder, like, why now? Like, why is it that everyone has these little bios that say my sort of I can label myself and put myself into all these boxes, and it's kind of it's got something to do with the technology that we use in that it's encouraging us to like quantify our identities, and it comes back to sort of a sense of spiritual poverty in a way of not not believing that there's something fundamental that unites us. Rather we have these little bios that describe the different allegiances that we have. And it's a losing game. People, it's always done for the sake of empowerment. I don't find it very empowering. I don't think it ultimately empowers anybody. It just
I agree.
makes us weaker a little bit more each day. So I think that. But to be honest, I mean, I see it on the left as much as on the right. It's really sort of a.
Oh, it's on both ends. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if there are any more questions. Otherwise, we'll. I feel like there are still very many more questions. Only words internalized. If you need to go though, you let me know. Another $5. Thank you, Insane Hermit. Do you care if polar bears go extinct? That's a random question to ask.
Yeah, I care if polar bears go extinct. Yes.
All right, cool. Sandy Turner. Oh no, that's not to you. That's to someone else. Okay. Let's go. No, I think that's it. Those are all the questions. All right, that's cool. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Was it what you expected? Not what you expected?
I don't know what I expected. I didn't expect to have as much fun as I did. It was good.
Yay! I'm a fun girl.
No, it's great. I appreciate you reaching out because, obviously the internet is a place where people typically just speak to other people that have the same points of view, and we've managed to find things that we agree on and things that we disagree on, and we didn't sort of insult one another. So that's great. It's a win.
I would have. Yeah, I don't insult people though, but not publicly anyway. No, just kidding. I won't insult you behind your back. No, I didn't. You don't come off to me as a far lefty type of guy, and we both agree on the political spectrum that we don't want to identify with it because it's. So I like that. I think we have far more in common than we realized. As well as what we disagreed with. Yeah. So anyone was hateful towards my child. That's absurd. Oh yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah, that's cool. Well, I'll I think we can bow out. Thanks everyone for watching. Next week I have my guest is the woman who is opposing Ilhan Omar in the American election. So that'll be cool. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna leave the studio and end the broadcast. Bye everyone. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Emma Eros, for suggesting this interview. I hope you watched it and enjoyed it, and you got what you wanted out of it. End broadcast.